The conditional mood in French is used to express actions that would happen, could happen, or might happen, depending on a certain condition. It's called a conditional because the action depends on something else, and it's introduced by the word si, if. In English, we often use would, could, or should to express conditionals, while having multiple types. In French, however, there are fewer types, but the good thing about the mood is that it's a fusion of two concepts, specifically type 2. Conditional type 2 uses verb stems from the future simple tense and imperfect endings. We can see that future stems give the idea of the action being in the future, while imperfect endings soften it, expressing potentiality rather than certainty. That's also why the conditional often corresponds to would in English. It's like the future seen through possibility instead of certainty. So, future stems are the base that points to what will or could happen, while imperfect endings are the marker that places the action in a hypothetical world. In my future simple video, I mentioned that future verb stems resemble the same root that will be used in the conditional, and now we can see how. The conditional mood, specifically type 2, is formed from future stems and imperfect endings, so there is nothing new that we need to learn because I already made videos about these topics. I highly recommend watching them before this lesson. Considering future stems and imperfect endings, we know that regular verbs will use their stem from their infinitive with imperfect endings, especially those that end in ir and ir. Verbs that end in re will remove and then receive the imperfect endings. For irregular verbs, we use the same stems as from the future tense. After a brief review of these concepts, we can finally see the main types of conditionals, which use if clauses with si. In French, conditional sentences have two parts, the if clause and the result, and there are three types of si clauses depending on the level of reality. Conditional type 1 shows real and possible conditions that might actually happen. Its pattern is si plus a present tense verb that leads into a future simple condition. It's the English equivalent of using if plus a present tense verb plus will, which in French has the same pattern. The if clause is si plus the present, and the result is in the future simple. Some examples are: si j'ai le temps, je le ferai. If I have time, I will do it. Si tu étudies, tu réussiras. If you study, you will succeed. In type 1, the if clause uses present conjugations, and the result has future simple conjugations, so there are no future stems and imperfect endings. This combination is needed in conditional type 2, so let's see it. Conditional type 2 talks about hypothetical and unreal events in the present, where the situation is not true. It's the English equivalent of using if plus a past tense verb plus would, which in French is slightly different. While the structure is the same, the meaning in this type is different. We have to use si with verb conjugations from the imperfect past in the if clause. However, the result will use future stems combined with imperfect endings, thereby creating the present conditional. If in English we add the word would, the meaning in French is achieved by a fusion of future stems and imperfect endings, which I showed at the beginning of the video. Some examples are: si j'avais de l'argent, je voyagerais en France. If I had money, I would travel to France. Si tu étais là, nous serions heureux. If you were here, we would be happy. Notice how the if clause uses imperfect conjugations, while the result has verbs that are combined from future stems and imperfect endings. While it can be tricky to use this type, it's the most spoken in French conversation, so it's very practical to use it. The last type to know is conditional type 3, which explains something unreal in the past that didn't happen. it's the English equivalent of using if, the structure, had done, and the result, would have done. This type is considered to be the hardest to understand because formally, it's the most specific type dealing with unrealized past events. Its pattern uses C plus pluperfect conjugations in the if clause, but the result is formed very differently, which creates the past conditional. The formation of the result is made using the auxiliary verbs avoir and être in the conditional plus a past participle. This means that avoir and être will use their future stems with imperfect endings, thereby giving their formation in the conditional. Additionally, don't forget that past participles must agree in gender and number with the subject. Once again, it's something I've shown many times before in previous videos, so I will not explain it here. Due to the complexity of this type, it's more prevalent in formal writing, but not in speech, which means that you will find it more in French literature. Still, it's important to know how to use it in speech. So some examples are: Si j'avais su, je ne serais pas venu. If I had known, I wouldn't have come. Si elle avait étudié, elle aurait réussi. If she had studied, she would have passed. In general, these were all conditional types in French, but aside from C clauses, the mood can also be used in other contexts, like politeness, requests, reported speech, and uncertainty. Some examples are: Pourrais-vous m'aider? Il a dit qu'il viendrait demain. Le président serait malade. In conclusion, we can see a summary table that condenses the concept into its types. So remember the connection between the present and future, the present conditional and imperfect, and the past conditional and pluperfect. Even so, you can see the definition, formation, and usage of the conditional mood, which gives you everything you need to speak, read, and write correctly in everyday French. Overall, this is how the conditional mood and if clauses fully work in French.